Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video. This is the 14th episode of the story, where Might Guy trades Neji and Tenten for Naruto and Hinata. Can he turn this motley crew of misfits into a team of geniuses? Or will he be compelled to stop wearing spandex for good? Remember to like, share, and subscribe to the channel after watching the video. So, let us begin. Destruction reigned everywhere as a single woman who held onto a small girl hurried through the streets of Konoha. She had been enjoying a once quiet day in the village with her daughter while her husband and older son watched the Chunin exams. Now she ran through the streets littered with broken glass and flaming buildings, all the while being chased by a group of the same, strange robotic boy. "Where are you going, bitch?" One of the Zakus let out a mechanical laugh as he propelled himself forward from the fire that was spraying from his hands. The woman only ran faster. Suddenly, a kunai landed a ways ahead of her. It exploded with a loud bang and the woman was blown backward. She turned her body and wrapped her arms tightly around her daughter as she smashed into the ground. Four Zakus slowly walked up and smiled sadistically down at her. "Please just let my daughter go." The little girl was sobbing painfully as the woman looked up at the robotic boys with a tear-stricken face of her own. One of the Zakus slowly bent down and looked at her, his face dead serious. The woman began to crawl backward in fear but Zaku latched onto her arm, and the sadistic smile was back. "I'll take her off your hands." He reached forward and grabbed onto the girl and began to yank her from her mother's grasp. "No. Please. She's just a child." The woman shouted and pleaded as she held onto her daughter with all her might. "Shut up." Zaku's face scowled for a split second as he smacked the woman in the face and yanked the small girl free. "Mommy!" The small girl shouted as she reached for her to no avail. Zaku smiled. "You'll never see mommy again, brat." Zaku's stomach opened and he reached into his stomach and pulled out a kunai. "No." The woman got up but was battered back down by two other Zakus. They each pinned an arm to the ground. "Enjoy the show," they said together in the same mechanical voice. "Please," the woman couldn't see anything at all as her tears blurred her vision. The next thing she heard, however, surprised her. "What the hell?" All four Zakus said simultaneously. "Why can't I move? Kiba. Choji. They're bound." Shikamaru shouted as he sat perfectly still, his hands still in the form of a seal. "About damn time." Kiba shouted as he ran forward and immediately ripped the girl from Zaku's arms. "I got you, ma'am." Choji pulled the woman out from underneath the other two Zakus. She was sobbing harder now, mumbling barely coherent words of thanks. "Like hell am I going to let you dickheads get away with this?" All four Zakus present began glowing yellow. "Get out of there." Sakura ran towards them but it was too late. All four Zakus violently exploded, sending pieces of metal and debris everywhere. Sakura and everyone else covered their faces to protect themselves from the heat. "No!" Ino shouted as stared at the smoke that occupied the spots where her friend and teammate had just been. Akamaru, still shaped like Kiba, began sniffing loudly. He turned his head to the left and gazed upwards and gave a loud bark. Everyone followed his gaze. On top of the roof stood Shino and laying next to him in a heap were Kiba, Choji, and the mother and daughter. "Damn," Kiba rubbed his back as he sat up. "That was a painful ride but I have to hand it to you, it saved our asses." He turned and smiled up at Shino who had used his insects to save them by picking them up and dropping them off on the roof just before the explosions went off. Shino merely nodded down at him. "It would appear they are unharmed." Shikamaru, who had been tense just moments ago, relaxed his shoulders. "I need food." Choji raised his arm into the air as he gasped for breath. The mother and daughter sat on top of his stomach, looking completely bewildered by the sudden change of events. "Are you okay?" Shino bowed slightly as he stuck his one hand forward to help them up. You boys," the woman began, choking on her words as tears began to slide down her face again. "You saved us." She jumped forward and tackled Shino in a hug. "Well, it wasn't anything special." Shino rubbed his head in embarrassment. It was rare that someone was willing to hug him. "Geez, look at the hero over here." Kiba laughed from where he sat before he too was tackled by the daughter, who was also sobbing heavily. "Gah!" Choji sat up and began taking in huge gulps of air now that the weight was off his body. "Somebody save us." The sound of people screaming from a few streets down reached the ears of everyone there. "Get them down and join us ASAP." Shikamaru shouted as he and the others on the ground took to the roofs to save the other people in need. "You heard him." Shino adjusted his glasses as his bugs began to gently let them all down. "We have to hurry and save others. If you keep running you'll be to the shelter in just a couple of blocks," Kiba said as he stood up, the girl in his arms. "You'll make it for sure, and if not just holler and we'll be there to save you again." "Thank you all so much," the woman continued to sob words of thanks into Shino's now drenched shoulder. "We're genin of Konohagakure," Choji said as he stumbled up. The other two nodded. "Saving people is what we do." Lee and Niji charged straight at each other inside the barrier that split them off from everyone else in Konoha. Naruto remained pinned to the cross, and Hinata, who had just quit struggling against the water ropes, held her head above the surface to watch. Meanwhile, Kabuto just continued to smile as evilly as ever. "Take this fist of youth," Lee shouted as he threw the strongest punch he could in his weakened state. Niji ducked under it and continued forward, bringing his palms out in a thrust. "Lee, you fool! You can't beat me!" Lee turned his body sideways and just barely dodged the Juken strike. He held his elbow high and brought it down. "There is only one way to prove you wrong and save my friend." Niji's forearm blocked the strike. He knocked Lee's elbow back up with such force that he stumbled backward. "It's not about right and wrong," Niji yelled as his Juken connected with Lee's stomach, sending the genin splashing into the ankle-deep water. "He is a jonin controlling my body. I might as well be stronger than normal. Meanwhile, you are completely worn out. Fate isn't on your side in this, Lee." "Shut up." Lee rose to his feet. "Even if I did believe in fate and knew it was against me, you think I would just sit here and do nothing?" He glared darkly at his ex-teammate. "I will push myself past my limits and destroy fate with my own two hands." Niji's eyes widened as he stared at the one boy whom he had come closest to calling a friend. "So be it, Lee. If my body crushes you, I have nothing to do with it. That is the curse of fate that now binds me." Hinata was right, Lee said as he slipped into a stance that made it look like he was ready to start a race. "You simply use fate as an excuse to hide behind." Niji was surprised. Lee's voice had come from above, but he was still right in front of him. His body jumped backward on its own accord just before Lee's foot smashed into the ground, sending water spraying everywhere. Niji blinked a couple of times as the water hit his eyes. When his vision cleared, he saw 5 different Lees all around him. "You're using afterimages again. I'm surprised you have the speed for that," Niji replied in monotone as his body automatically reacted and blocked Lee's next attack. The image of Lee in front of him was smiling. "I do not need to open a single gate to perform such a trick." Lee's voice jumped to a new location with every word. Meanwhile, an image of himself remained behind. "You know the problem with afterimages?" Kabuto asked loudly. Lee didn't respond as he appeared behind Niji with his foot high in the air. "They make it easy to predict your next move." A wall of earth rose right next to Niji and Lee's foot slammed into it. Yow! Lee was skipping and holding onto the foot that had smacked into the wall. He hadn't even noticed Niji from the seals for that move, it had been so quick. "I told you, Lee. You're a fool." Niji spun around in a sweep that caught Lee while he was still skipping. Lee was flipped so his body was horizontal with the ground, and as he began to fall, Niji drilled his elbow into his solar plexus. Lee spits blood as he slammed full force into the ground at Niji's feet. If you had kicked at him at your full strength, you would have easily shattered that wall. However, you held back for fear of hurting your friend. Kabuto cackled as he clapped his hands. Your previous words and your current actions are contradicting each other. I thought you would say you would fight him to save your friend. This isn't a fight. It's a pummeling. Lee didn't move from the water or answer. He appeared to be unconscious. Kabuto's face suddenly twisted into one of boredom. Finish him off, Niji. I thought I would get some good entertainment before I had to get serious, but it would appear I was mistaken. No! Hinata shouted. Don't worry. I'll bring him back to life. I'm capable of it, after all. Kabuto chuckled as he turned and began walking towards Naruto. He stopped just in front of the blonde. Are you ready, Naruto-kun? Naruto gave him a feral grin. Try whatever the hell you want. The fox is staying inside me. I've protected this village for 13 years and I'm sure as hell not about to fail now. Kabuto smirked as he gazed at each of Naruto's hands, which still dripped blood down onto the wooden cross. As I explained earlier, I am before anything, a scientist. I was also Orochimaru's doctor and as such, surgery happens to be a specialty of mine. You plan to cut the fox out of me? Naruto continued to hold his feral smile. Precisely. Kabuto reached into his back pouch and pulled out a kunai in the shape of a scalpel. You can think of this cross that you are bound to as a special operating table which allows me to extract special chakra. In this case, your prisoner. That extraction may have to wait. Your pawn is about to be knocked for a loop. Kabuto spun around at Naruto's words. Niji slowly walked up to Lee, raised his foot above his face. I'm sorry, Lee. He brought his foot down. A moment later and he was dazed and flying high in the air. What? Kabuto's amused smile returned. Looks like I might get some more entertainment after all. He had just barely caught a glimpse of what had happened. Lee had reacted to Niji's strike by punching the bottom of his sandal with such force that it had sent the Hyuga genius flying. Never think I am down. Lee appeared in the air in front of his opponent. You idiot. You should have gone for Kabuto. He was wide open. Niji brought his arms together in an X just in time. Lee's fist smashed into his guard and sent him flying toward the ground. Niji began running through seals. As he approached the earth, he stuck his hands out. His palms hit the ground and then the rest of his body did, but instead of smashing against it and creating a splash of water, mud was flung everywhere. Niji had turned the ground to mud to soften his blow. His mud-covered form got to his feet. Niji wanted nothing more than to wipe himself down or at least shake some of it off, but he wasn't the one in control. This is an official match, Niji. I cannot abandon it. Lee landed not too far from him. He appeared to stand much higher now as Niji was knee-deep in mud while he was only ankle-deep in water. Kabuto clapped loudly. That is a good fake answer, but I'm not buying it. The real reason you are fighting your friend is that it keeps me from making a move. You've realized that it is hard for me to multitask both minds at once, and so you are keeping that body busy and ultimately buying yourself time for someone to break in and save you. Lee cursed internally. He had been figured out. Of course, I could easily focus both his mind and my own on the same task of killing you, but this is much more amusing. Kabuto adjusted his glasses. Now fight for me, my pawns. Niji completed another set of seals and even more, mud began to crawl up his body, completely covering him from head to toe, leaving only his eyes visible. The mud then hardened. Rock armor? Lee's bushy brows shot up in surprise. This was the true purpose behind Kakashi-sensei teaching Doton. Niji stepped up from the mud hole he was in. Doton is the best ninjutsu for defending. Combine that with my already powerful defensive capabilities and I become untouchable. No matter how much speed you have, it won't help you. That is how powerful I've become. Lee shook his head. Having power is not what makes you strong, Niji. I can still win this. Niji scowled. He didn't want to be fighting right now, but Lee's attitude was getting on his nerves anyway. Not more of that Bellyvanian self-garbage. He replied snidely. You should try it sometime. Lee was off at his rival a second later. Niji raised his hand and blocked Lee's punch with his palm. Lee stepped back and let out another yelp. Before he could move, Niji stepped forward and buried his palm in Lee's gut. Lee stumbled backward but managed to stay standing. Blood rolled out from the corners of his mouth. That was a Juken strike as well. Not only does my armor protect me from all kinds of physical attacks, but it lets me use my attacks at will. Niji was running at Lee as he talked. This is why it would be best if you just quit before I killed you. You know I cannot give up. Lee stepped backward and dodged Niji's first swing. He knocked Niji's second attack to the side and then spun around, delivering a strong kick to Niji's head. It connected, but Niji didn't even flinch. You're out of strength, Lee. Niji knocked Lee's foot aside and swung forward. Lee vanished a second later. I am not out of speed, Lee shouted as he appeared behind him. Kaiten. Lee was blown backward by Niji's spiraling shield. He landed on his feet and was gone a second later. Give up, Lee. Don't make me hurt you. Quit sprouting the same line. Lee appeared next to the spinning shield and kicked at it again. He bounced back lightly before attacking it again. He was once again repelled back a couple of feet. This time he skids to a stop. He looked up and Niji's rotation was still active, but he felt a sudden jolt of pain in his shoulder. A second later and it looked like Niji was charging at him. Lee was knocked down hard as he felt an invisible attack hit his face. The time delay genjutsu. Lee cursed and rolled through the water away from Niji, who appeared to him to be punching where he had just been. He was suddenly picked up by what felt like a kick and sent skipping across the water. Lee. Niji's voice was pleading now. Please, you don't have what it takes to break a genjutsu. So what? Lee pulled himself up slowly, agonizingly. If I perceive everything 2 seconds slower, then that just means I have to be 2 seconds faster. As he talked, Niji already appeared to be running forward. Lee breathed in deeply and closed his eyes. His mind slowly emptied as he erased all sense of feeling. He could no longer hear Niji's steps as he ran at him. He couldn't see him as he pulled his Juken strike back. The only thing he could feel was his body, his breathing. The way his fist felt when he clenched it tightly. I can do this, only his voice filtered through. Niji pulled his palm back. This may be the end, Lee. He only wished he could close his eyes as he swung forward. He couldn't watch as he pummeled someone to death without being in control anymore. Niji and Kabuto's eyes widened in surprise as Niji's attack was deflected. Before he could even ask how, he had Lee's fist right in his face. His mud armor cracked apart around his upper body and he was jarred backward. I felt it connect. Lee slowly opened his eyes. Yosh! I can do this. He ran forward and swung his fist. Niji raised his arm to block Lee's attack, but Lee suddenly passed through him and another one from behind the first delivered a powerful kick that connected with his ribs. Niji's mud armor cracked apart more and this time whole pieces went flying off. Kabuto's smile got bigger. Interesting, used his afterimage ability as a screening for his attack. Not only that, but he is fighting on par with someone while 2 seconds behind. Hinata smiled despite the situation. Lee Senpai has memorized the patterns of attack used in the Juken style. It's that memory that is letting him predict Niji's moves. Niji ducked under Lee's kick. He then swung at him with both palms. Lee placed his hands on top of Niji's outstretched arms and used them to flip himself into the air. What? As Lee completed his flip, he brought the bottom of his foot into the back of Niji's head. He pushed off with all his might and slammed Niji's face straight into the ground. The mud armor around Niji's whole upper body crumpled away completely with that blow. Lee landed a few feet away and spun around. He was immediately running forward again. Kaiten. Niji activated his spinning shield as Lee jumped in the air and began spinning around at incredible speeds himself. Konoha-senpai. Lee's kick had been flying at the reverse of Niji's spin, and so when it connected it immediately stopped Niji's spin hard. Niji felt his whole body lock up from the force of his rough stop. Impossible. Not only did he predict that I would use the Kaiten, but he even put enough speed behind his kick to stop it. Niji! Lee shouted as he stepped forward and swung his fist with all his might. Niji's body was still locked up and he could do nothing as Lee's fist buried itself in his unprotected cheek. He was slammed into the water with a huge splash. Lee stood triumphantly over his body, panting heavily. Niji felt his arms try to move upwards on their own, but they collapsed back down. His body had Lee had won. No one breathed a word for a whole 30 seconds as Lee and Niji stared hard at each other. Finally, Lee broke the silence. Niji's my time back to normal? He asked hopefully. Niji sighed in exasperation. He wished he hadn't because water leaked into his mouth. He spits it out immediately. Idiot. Of course, your time is back, I can't even move. Lee let out a breath he looked like he had been holding. Good. That will make things much easier. He turned towards Kabuto. You can't mean to fight him, look how worn out you are. Niji attempted to reason with his ex-teammate once again. You couldn't even open the gates when you fought me. Lee shook his head. I chose not to open them. What? Niji's eyes widened in surprise. Niji, Lee said. You know what the biggest difference between you and everyone else I fought is? Niji's silence was answer enough. The biggest difference between you and them was they tried their hardest. Everyone else put forth everything they could and mustered all the strength in their bodies. They put countless hours into training believing it would pay off one day. Lee closed his eyes. The images of Naruto, Dosu, and Haku all came to his mind instantly. You do not do that. You work at things the minimal amount and master it. Lee turned and looked at him. You can blame it on fate all you want, but there is only one thing keeping you from overcoming that seal that binds your movements, and that one thing is yourself. Mokuton no Jutsu. Yamato and Hashirama shouted at the same time. More giant branches of trees ripped their way from the ground, cracking the concrete and splitting the buildings. The battling shinobi who were standing there were forced to move or risk getting caught in the attack. The massive roots slammed into each other, but Hashirama's broke through and continued towards Yamato. My ability isn't strong enough, Yamato cursed as he jumped out of the way of the winding branches. Suddenly many small branches broke free from the large one and shot straight at him. Before Yamato could react, he was bound completely. I've got you. Hayate jumped upwards and sliced the branches binding him apart. They both fell to the ground and landed nimbly on their feet on top of one of the many giant branches that covered the streets of Konoha now. Thanks. Yamato sighed in relief. He thought he had been done for. I told you I would back you up, thanks are not necessary. Hayate held his blade at the ready. More branches were coming at them. Can you cut me a path through? Yamato took a running stance. I'm going to have to try to make up for his power with speed. Of course, I can. Hayate immediately began to run at the many branches that were converging on them. Yamato was right behind him as he hacked and sliced his way through the numerous wooden appendages. More and more of them kept coming though, and soon they were surrounded by wood that threatened to crush the life of them out of them at any moment. Get down! Hayate shouted as he raised his blade high. Yamato dove to the floor just in time. Hayate swung his blade in a complete circle and all the branches around them fell apart seconds later. Yamato rolled to his feet and was back off instantly. Hashirama stood on the largest root that came from the ground and Yamato was forced to jump a whole couple of stories just to reach him. He landed in front of the former Hokage in a crouch. Impressive that you made it this far. Hashirama brought his hands up in the form of a seal as he talked. I won't let you. Yamato extended his hand forward and wood shot from his arm and immediately bound Hashirama's hands together in a wooden box. You can't form seals like that, he said as he charged forward. Binding my Mokuton with Mokuton is a smart move. Hashirama nodded in appreciation at Yamato as he slid one leg back slightly. I am honored to be praised by you. Yamato jumped in the air and kicked at his idol. The Shodai raised the wooden block and Yamato's kick connected with that, skidding the Shodai back from the force. Yamato landed and swung a fist at him next. Hashirama ducked and moved forward, bringing his head up as he did, catching Yamato in the chin and knocking him backward. Before Yamato had a chance to recover, he felt the Shodai's foot bury itself into his stomach. To keep himself from falling backward, Yamato shot out 2 spikes of wood from his hands that he used to anchor himself to the giant branch they fought on. I guess I was too full of myself for thinking I could beat you in taijutsu even with your hands bound. Yamato pulled the small spikes up and held them as 2 small spears in each hand. Maybe so, but you use your Mokuton wisely. You know you are not as powerful as I am with it, so you use it in little ways that work well. It may be rude of me, but I failed to catch the name of the successor of my ability. Shodaisama. Yamato felt his mouth go dry at the praise he received from his idol. Your name, Hashirama repeated as he ran forward. They refer to me as Yamato now. He brought his spears up and blocked the Shodai's 2-handed swings. Both of his spears were splintered apart and the Shodai's attack carried on towards his face. Out of the way. Hayate shoved Yamato to the right and then jumped to the left. Hashirama's attack missed completely and he turned to look at the swordsman before charging at him. No, you don't. Yamato shouted as 8 square branches of wood sprout from both of his arms and zigzagged towards the Shodai. Your opponent is me. If that is what you wish. Hashirama spun around and prepared for the wood attack. Before he had a chance to react though, he felt Hayate's blade pierce him in the heart from his back. As the blade exited from his chest, he brought his bounded hands backward and sliced them free. Shit, Yamato and Hayate realized at the same time the mistake they made. Mokuton no Jutsu. The wood from Yamato's arm veered off as Hashirama took control of them. They spread around him and then closed back in right on Hayate, who was directly behind. Hayate went to pull his blade out and jump away, but the Shodai grabbed onto the part still protruding from his chest. What? Hayate let his surprise cost him as his body was battered from all sides by Yamato's attack. He fell to the ground in a bloody mess. Hayate-san! Yamato shouted as he began to run for his fallen comrade. Now is not the time to get distracted. The Shodai shouted as another giant root ripped apart the ground behind him. It stood 10 stories straight tall before flung itself towards the ground like a giant tentacle. You won't do that. It'll crush you too. Yamato already knew it was pointless as he yelled it. The Shodai would just regenerate while he and Hayate would be crushed. I got you guys. A giant Chuza yelled as he moved forward and grabbed onto the branch. Chowza-san. Yamato was so glad to see the big man lending him aid. Kage Nui no Jutsu. The Shodame was bound by a set of black tentacles that sprung from the ground a second later. Yamato. Get Hayate out from there. Shikaku has crouched down a little ways behind Chuza. Right. Yamato nodded gratefully and ran forward. Just then though, the sound of more roots breaking free from the ground caused him to turn around. On either side of Chuza, 2 giant roots rose that were just as tall as him. Oh boy, Chuza could do nothing as he was already having trouble holding onto one root. The other 2 wrapped around his waist and legs and pulled him back and then slammed him to the ground, his body crushed many buildings and many shinobi who weren't able to move in time. Not good. Shikaku also lost control of his shadow sewing technique when he lost Chuza's shadow. Before he was able to make another move, a bunch of miniature roots sprout up from below his feet. He was bound and slammed into the ground only a moment later. The giant root that Chuza had been holding began descending again. I won't let you crush him. Yamato ran through more seals. The root slowed its descent towards the ground and just as it was 10 feet above them it stopped completely. Yamato dropped to his knee, panting heavily and sweat rolling from his forehead and off his chin. Hayate-san, get up. Hurry. He knew that Hayate couldn't hear him but he spoke anyway. Ugh, Hayate groaned as he slowly opened his eyes and began to pick himself back up. His vision was still incredibly dark, he thought as he sat up. Then he realized it wasn't his vision that was dark but he was inside of a giant shadow. He immediately looked above him and saw a giant root looming terrifyingly over his head. I suggest you move. Yamato and I are wrestling for control over the root. It is only a matter of moments before I win. Hashirama spoke directly in front of the shinobi. But he'll be crushed too, Hayate said aloud as he stumbled to his feet. A sacrifice he seemed prepared to make to save your life. The Shodai turned his head slightly to gaze at the swordsman. So what will you do now? A foolish question, I'll save him and myself. Hayate immediately ran past the Shodai and towards Yamato. What are you doing? Yamato shouted. Get out from under here. Not without you. Hayate ran up next to him. You are the one who must defeat him. Yamato chuckled darkly. Defeat him? How? He's invincible. It's a miracle we've managed to last this long. Nothing is impossible and no one is invincible. I'm sure you'll find a way. Hayate bent down and rested his hand on Yamato's shoulder. We need to both survive first though. He turned his gaze back up towards the massive root that could crush them at any second. Imlosing it. Sweat was beginning to pool at the spot Yamato was kneeling. The root gave a sudden lurch and Hayate narrowed his eyes. He stood up straight and angled his sword. Damn it! Yamato roared as he lost control. The root slammed down on top of the other one, enveloping them both and creating a loud crash. Yamato! Hayate! Shikaku yelled from where he remained bound. The sight of shimmering to the side caught his eyes. He turned to see a barrage of shuriken and kunai flying at him. Protect him! Another group of shuriken came from behind and collided with the first group. All of them landed uselessly in front of Shikaku's face. Phew, too close, too close. He breathed a sigh of relief. The roots around him finally loosened up, probably because the Shodai had been crushed. He easily wiggled his way out and then ran towards the spot where Yamato and Hayate had been. Where do you think you're going? A group of Otogekure shinobi landed in front of him. Kage Nui no Jutsu. His shadow shot forward and black spike speared the men before they even knew what happened. He didn't even break pace and immediately reached the two roots. When he reached the top of the newest one he was surprised to see a giant fissure in the spot where the two of them had been. Just as he saw it a hand reached out and grabbed onto the ledge around. A moment later and Hayate's panting face appeared. He pulled himself up until his waist was out and then he gave a mighty heave. Yamato's face appeared above next and he placed both arms over the top of the ledge. You guys are all right. Shikaku ran forward and knelt next to the two panting men who were both completely out of the fissure. That your work? He nodded towards the swordsman. Hayate nodded back. I barely made it. These roots are stronger than most rock. That's our Shodai for you. Yamato was chuckling as he fell on his back. He gazed at the sky and began laughing even louder. We made it. It's not over yet. Hayate rose to his feet. We have to find a way to defeat him. But how? He's immortal. Shikaku rubbed his chin thoughtfully. Besides, even if he wasn't, the Shodai has the body of the sturdiest tree. It would take a great power to bring him down if he was even alive. What did you say? Yamato asked as he bolted up suddenly. Shikaku looked at him in surprise. It would take a great power to bring him down? No, before that. Yamato was on his feet now, his eyes wide. The Shodai has the body of the sturdiest tree. That's it. That's the answer. Shikaku and Hayate looked at each other and then back at him. What's the answer? They asked at the same time. Yamato opened his mouth to say more, but the sound of wood splintering apart stopped him as the Shodai busted free from where he had been imprisoned. No time to explain. I need you two to back me up as I prepare my technique. What are you going to do? Shikaku asked in exasperation. Let it go. Hayate placed his hand on Shikaku's shoulder. He's found the answer. We'll leave it to him. He turned to the Shodai. Here he comes. Hashirama was running at them while going through even more seals. More branches sprout out from the wood they were fighting on and launched toward them. Shikaku clucked his teeth. Fine. You better hurry, Yamato. I'm already on it. Yamato had his eyes closed and held a single seal. Both men could feel an incredible amount of chakra surging from their bodies. Let's go, Hayate said as he turned and began running forward. Damn, no choice. Shikaku ran through a set of seals. Kage Nui no Jutsu. His shadow sprang to life once again. Anytime a branch approached Yamato, his shadow needles would strike at it. Hayate chopped and slashed his way forward towards the Hashirama. Within seconds he made it to the man. This fight ends now. Hayate brought his sword up high and swung it down. I hope for the village's sake, it does. Hashirama stepped to the side and dodged the sword. Hayate immediately stopped his sword and changed its direction, forcing him to jump over it now. He performed a flip in the air and brought his foot down over the top of Hayate's head. Hayate held his sword up, but the Shodai continued his attack forward. Hayate's sword sliced through his leg at the knee, but the foot continued forward and smashed the swordsman right in the nose. Hayate stumbled backward, and by the time he settled back into his stance, Hashirama's leg was already reattached. Crafty, using that regeneration to your advantage like that. If only I had any say in the matter. Hashirama stepped forward but jerked to a stop. His whole body went rigid. Hayate looked at him in amazement as a small twig broke free from the skin at Shodai's skin. The twig continued to grow and then a small leaf sprouted on it. Suddenly, many other small twigs began to break away from his body. Hashirama reached his hand forward and touched one. Ah, he see. What an interesting strategy. Hashirama turns his eyes toward Yamato. Shikaku's eyes widened. I see. Takes a senju's cells to create the wood techniques, you're taking control of the cells in his body to permanently change him. Yamato nodded as he opened his eyes. I just hope I have the chakra to finish this. That won't be necessary, the metamorphosis is already underway. Allow me to help you. The Shodai raised his fingers and formed a seal. Suddenly a boom of chakra erupted across the area. What's he doing? Yamato almost lost control of his technique to his surprise. He's going to destroy what I'm trying to do. Shikaku shook his head. Just watch. The small twig suddenly sprang to life and continued to grow much faster. Soon the Shodai was completely covered in a twisting mass of wood that was beginning to extend towards the sky. Leaves began to sprout from the top and roots shot forward from the bottom and smashed their way into the ground. We got to move. Hayate shouted as he ran up to the two of them. He noticed that all other shinobi in the area were already fleeing the scene. The technique, Yamato protested. It's already beyond your control. Shikaku grabbed onto him and yanked him backward. We're moving, now. Yamato nodded dumbly as he saw the trunk of the massive growing tree expand closer and closer towards them. They all turned and immediately began to retreat deeper into the village. Elsewhere in the village, Kakashi and the Nidaime turned their heads as they saw the giant tree continuing to grow much taller than the buildings of Konoha. "Brother, so you're leaving one last gift to the village?" Tobirama smiled as he looked at it. The tree finally stopped growing, but it was already hundreds of stories high, making it visible to everyone in the village no matter where they were. Not only was it high, but its branches were huge, hanging deep into the village. Big, lush green leaves covered the whole top of it. All fighting in the village temporarily stopped as everyone turned to look at it. Yamato stared in amazement at it. Did Ito that? His knees buckled and he slipped down to them. Shikaku smiled from next to him. Kind of. You started the process. Shodaisama merely finished it. When he channeled all that chakra into his already morphing cells, he greatly strengthened the effects. You could say he found his way out. Heiate sheathed his sword. How was he capable of doing that against the reviver's will? Shikamaru scratched his head. He probably cheated the jutsu. He channeled the chakra to perform a powerful technique, knowing that his chakra would do this instead. Shikaku opened his mouth to say more, but a heavy breeze passed through the area. The leaves of the giant tree rustled. Individually the leaves were quiet, but the millions of them together made a loud noise audible to those below. That wasn't what caused Shikaku to quit speaking, however. No, what caused him to stop talking were the strange tiny glowing orbs that fell from the tree. Is this snow? A random nearby shinobi asked. Idiot. Have you ever seen green snow? Another shinobi asked. Then what is it? Hell if I know. Before the two could continue, an explosion pulled everyone back to their senses. The Otogakure shinobi had gotten over their surprise and were attacking again. They all rushed forward into battle. Yamato landed down from the building just as an exploding tag landed in front of him. Shit. He had no chance of dodging. The tag exploded and he covered his face, waiting to be incinerated, yet nothing happened. Huh. Yamato slowly lowered his hands and opened his eyes. The green orbs in front of him shimmered brightly. Zaku stood with his back to a wall as the rookies surrounded him. They didn't dare attack him though, for he held a kunai to a young man's throat. Help me, the man begged. Quiet. Zaku pressed the kunai tighter to him. Let him go. Kiba shouted. Zaku began chuckling. Then he broke into wild laughter. Say goodbye. You couldn't save everyone. He began glowing yellow just as the green orbs began to fall around the section of the village they stood in as well. Zaku exploded. No! Everyone shouted at once. The man disappeared in the explosion. Kiba dropped to his knees and slammed his fist into the ground. Damn it, damn it, damn it! He shouted as he continued to punch the ground. Sakura and Ino averted their eyes sadly. Everyone, Shino's voice was laced with awe, not an expression often heard from him. So naturally, everyone turned to see what he was staring at. The man who had been caught in the explosion lay unconscious in the crowd but otherwise completely unharmed. What the hell happened? Multiple people asked at once. Just then they saw all the Zakus in the area immediately taking off towards the giant tree located towards the edge of the village. They all immediately jumped to the highest nearby roof. It wasn't only the Zakus. Every single shinobi in the village, friend or foe, was making their way with great haste to the tree. Shikamaru rubbed his chin. Whatever just happened has to do with that tree. That means it has to be defended no matter what. We're going to, aren't we? Shino sounded apprehensive about the idea. Of course. Kiba and Akamaru were already off. Kiba. Wait. Sakura was after him a moment later. Soon the rest of the genin were after them. Yamato immediately stopped running and looked around. That had been Hashirama's voice. Shodai-sama? Yamato felt kind of stupid. He had seen the Shodai turn into a tree. There was no way he was talking to him. No one else had heard it as everyone was running past him and towards the tree. Yamato, this is my final gift towards the village I love so much. Yamato realized a moment later that he wasn't crazy and that the Shodai's voice was coming from the green orbs. This jutsu doesn't have enough power to protect everyone, but anyone not bearing a weapon I can protect from harm. Hashirama's voice continued quickly. These orbs are what saved me too, then. Yamato realized now why he was still alive. I owed you a special favor. You are the only shinobi this jutsu will be able to protect. Yamato's face fell at that. You shouldn't have wasted it on me. He shouted at the orbs. No, I wanted it to be you. Yamato's eyes widened in surprise. Yamato, I am glad Mokutan was entrusted to you. I can rest knowing it is in good hands. Yamato. The wood user jumped in surprise as Kakashi landed next to him. What's going on here? The copy ninja asked. Civilians everywhere are suddenly being saved by these strange green orbs. It's Shodai-sama, Yamato choked out, his vision slightly clouded by tears. He's protecting the village. So it is that tree. How youthful. Guy landed next to both of them a moment later. They all turned towards the massive trunk of the tree. Hundreds of Konoha shinobi stood on its roots and its trunk. Yet hundreds of Hokage shinobi were charging at it. The sight of the Nidaime and Hayate fighting caught Kakashi's eyes. I got to go. He immediately took off towards the trunk. Yamato and Guy were about to follow, but Hiro landed in front of them. Oh my god, you're multiplying. Yamato shouted in terror as he jumped backward. How rude. Hiro laughed loudly, contradicting the words he just spoke. I'm afraid the controller of my body won't allow me to let you pass here, Guy. If you want to protect that tree, you're going to have to stop me first. Fine by me. Guy settled into his fighting stance. Yamato. Get to the tree. Protect Shodai-sama's final memory with your life. Right. Yamato nodded. He flipped up to the roof of the nearest uncollapsed building and moved onwards towards the tree. He looked back just in time to see Guy and Hiro begin to exchange blows. He landed on the tree and immediately was swarmed by a group of Hokage shinobi. Mokutan no Jutsu. The wood of the tree they were fighting on sprang to life and immediately sucked the group in front of him into itself. Nice, Yamato smiled at how little chakra that technique had taken. The tree had supplied most of it for him. While fighting here, he was at the advantage. The sound of fire reached his ears just moments later. He turned and saw every single Zaku in the village getting closer to the tree. Stop them. A hailstorm of kunai and shuriken immediately wiped out the first wave, but there were still hundreds more on the way. Yamato sighed. He had just fought and won against the Shodai, and yet all he had done was centered everything on one area, giving him no time to rest. I guess this is what it means to be at war. You aren't going any farther. Hiruzen shouted as he slammed his pole into Orochimaru's body, blasting him backward and through a couple of buildings. Asuma and Kurenai landed down next to him. We took care of the snakes, Asuma said as he readied his blades again. Things had gotten much quieter over here now. They were probably the only 4 shinobi not at the tree right now, and if they had their way Orochimaru wouldn't be getting even a single step closer. The house that Orochimaru had finally stopped and exploded as a group of giant snakes were summoned from the inside of it. Asuma sighed. So much for having taken care of the snakes. I leave it to you, son. Hiruzen gave him a small smile. Yeah. Take advantage of my kindness. Asuma nodded to Kurenai, who was already preparing another genjutsu for the snakes. Saratobi sensei. Orochimaru appeared in front of the old shinobi, his eyes flared with fury and his sword swinging down. You are quick to anger as always, Orochimaru. Sarutobi spun his staff around and knocked Orochimaru's blade to the side. Before Orochimaru could react, he spun it the other way and it smashed the Sannin in the throat. Orochimaru gagged and began to cough so badly he doubled over and spit went flying. A second later and his whole body heaved. Suddenly he spits out another one of himself that had the lower half of a snake. Now you're mine. Sarutobi wasn't able to do anything as Orochimaru's surprise attack caught him off guard. Orochimaru sliced right through him with his blade only for him to burst into smoke. A shadow clone? Doton, Doryuden no Jutsu. Orochimaru spun around to see the head of a mud dragon spraying a group of mud bullets at him. Katan, Karyuden no Jutsu. Hiruzen then spits fire from his mouth onto the muddy bullets, creating balls of molten fire that rained down on the Sannin. Kuchios no Jutsu. Orochimaru slammed his palms on the ground. A giant purple snake much bigger than all the ones he summoned before appeared coiled around him. The molten bullets slammed into the giant snake, which let out a loud hiss in irritation. Saratobathat's Manda. The Lord of Snakes. An eye appeared on the staff that used to be Enma as it warned the Hokage. The old man only nodded. I know. Orochimaru is beginning to get serious. Damn you, Orochimaru. The snake continued to hiss as it talked. The price for this will be high. Orochimaru cackled as the snake uncoiled from around him. I've already paid the ultimate price, I'm afraid. The giant snake looked at him curiously before it turned its gaze at Sarutobi. It's been a long time since I've had monkey sounds delicious. The snake lurched at Sarutobi, who immediately jumped high into the air. Enma, extend. He shouted as his staff grew to incredible lengths. He swung it in a long arc and before the snake could react he smashed it in the head. You've dropped your guard, sensei. Orochimaru appeared above the old man and swung his sword down. Sarutobi flipped so that he was upside down and caught the sword with both of his sandals. Think again, my foolish student. Hiruzen spun around, snapping Orochimaru's wrist and breaking the sword free from his grasp. By then the staff had retracted and he was already bringing it back forward when he noticed Manda was already coming at them again. The only thing he had time to do was throw Enma towards the ground as the snake ate both Orochimaru and him. Sarutobi! Enma shouted as he transformed back into a monkey. Hokage-sama! Kurenai shouted in horror as she watched what had just happened. He'll be all right. Asuma dropped the last snake of the group they were fighting. How can you be so calm after watching your father getting eaten? Kurenai turned and yelled at him. Getting upset won't help matters. The best way to help my old man is to take care of that snake. Asuma slowly approached Manda as he talked. The snake smiled hungrily at the two jonin. Not a moment later though, Enma's fist slammed into the bottom of the snake's jaw. Get ready to experience pain. The monkey growled. Enma, I am going to enjoy eating you yet. The snake immediately snapped down at the monkey. The snake smashed pointlessly into the ground. What? It looked around in surprise to see his whole world was dark. Genjutsu, you guessed it. Asuma swung his chakra knives at the giant snake. To his surprise, they failed to pierce his skin. The snake chuckled as it turned its head towards them. My scales are harder than diamonds. It'll take more than your puny blades to cut me. The snake lurched at the two of them with speed much too fast for its size. It's using its other senses to find us. Kurenai shouted as she and Asuma just barely dodged the strike of the snake's head. Then do something about them. Asuma yelled back. He and Enma jumped at the snake at the same time. Remember not to hurt him badly enough to dispel him or Sarutobi will be teleported with him, Enma shouted. Troublesome. Shikamaru's favorite phrase summed up the situation perfectly. Orochimaru, you fool. Sarutobi shouted as he delivered 3 swift punches at his student. Orochimaru blocked the strikes with his forearms. "What's the matter, sensei?" Orochimaru grinned wickedly as he and his sensei continued to exchange swift taijutsu strikes. "You don't like being inside the belly of a snake?" Sarutobi jumped and delivered a powerful kick that knocked the Sannin back into the sticky, pink wall that was part of the giant snake. To his surprise, Orochimaru sunk into the wall. "Surprised? This is my battlefield. You can't win here, Sarutobi-sensei." Orochimaru's tongue, wrapped around a kunai, shot from the top right part of the wall. Sarutobi went to move but couldn't as Orochimaru's hands grabbed at his ankles from below. What? He was only able to turn his body slightly and let the kunai pierce his shoulder instead of his heart. Sarutobi grabbed onto the tongue and yanked it hard, pulling Orochimaru's face from the wall. "Hello, sensei," Orochimaru spoke despite his tongue being held onto. Sarutobi pulled harder to get their face closer but suddenly Orochimaru's legs shot out from the left and right sides of the wall. They stretched impossibly long and the bottom of his feet smashed into the side of Sarutobi's head. "Damn!" Sarutobi let the tongue go which immediately retracted. He then ripped his feet free and stumbled forward and away from all of his students' appendages. When he spun around, however, they were all gone. It looked like they had never been there at all. The pain in his shoulder told him though that they had been there however. "Cook, what to do? How will you get out of this mess, sensei?" The voice mocked Sarutobi from all around. Before the old man could respond he felt something wet drop onto his shoulder. A hissing sound followed and he turned to see his protective shoulder pad being melted away. "Looks like I have to finish this fast." Sarutobi sighed as he slowly inched his way across the bottom of the snake's insides, keeping an eye on the top which continued to drop more of the corrosive liquid. "Finish this fast? Oh no, I intend to murder you nice and slow, sensei. Make you suffer for not being brave enough to face me the first time." Orochimaru broke into another fit of laughter. Just as he did, Sarutobi ran through a set of seals. "Katan, Gokakyu no Jutsu." He immediately released a giant fireball deeper into the snake's body. "No!" Orochimaru's upper body suddenly sprung forth from the top, his hands outstretched. They wrapped around his sensei's neck. "How dare you scorch this place?" The Sannin shrieked. "That was your biggest flaw, Orochimaru. You were too cocky." Sarutobi choked out as he grabbed onto his student's arms and yanked at him. Orochimaru was pulled completely from the wall just as the sound of something coming from the direction the fireball went reached their ears. "What is that? What did you do?" Orochimaru yelled. Sarutobi laughed. "You'll see, my foolish student. This isn't working." Asuma yelled as the house he had been hiding behind got devoured by the massive snake. "Just what kind of halfist genjutsu are you using?" he shouted as he immediately began moving to another hiding space. "You try putting the Lord of Snakes under a genjutsu sometime." Kurenai's forehead throbbed as she screamed back at him. "It's not as easy as it looks. Enough arguing." "Something is happening," Enma said as he gazed curiously at the snake that had quit moving. Its neck suddenly began convulsing as it seemed ready to throw up. "What's happening?" Kurenai asked in awe. Manda opened his mouth wide and let out a loud burp, blowing Orochimaru and Sarutobi from the snake's mouth. "No way," Enma wanted to smack his face. Only Sarutobi would think of making a snake burp to free himself. Asuma sighed and immediately lit up a cigarette. "I deny all relations to you," even Kurenai sweat dropped. "I may have just lost some respect for you, Hokage-sama." Sarutobi, however, was in no mode for jokes. "Asuma. Attack while its mouth is open." "Damn." Asuma threw down his just-lit cigarette. He immediately jumped so he was level with the snake and pointed his chakra blade so it was facing the snake's mouth. Say good night. The wind blade shot forward and pierced Manda through the roof of his mouth, shooting it out the top of the giant snake's head. Manda immediately vanished in a cloud of smoke. You bastard! Orochimaru screamed as he landed on the ground. Before he could charge at Asuma, Hiruzen landed in front of him. Not a step closer to my son. He shouted as he buried his fist inside Sannin's chin, knocking him into a collapsed building. Orochimaru slowly stumbled to his feet. I'm going to rip you apart. He seethed before suddenly pausing. His eyes were on something behind Sarutobi. The Hokage turned around to see a blustered-looking Temari sitting on her but in front of a pile of rubble. Haku, Dosu, and finally Zabuza landed next to her. The swordsman gazed at Sarutobi in a way of apology. We're not interrupting, are we? He asked as blandly as he could. What is this? Orochimaru asked as he got to his feet. Not only is a kunoichi from Sunagakure here, but so are my henchmen. Former henchmen. Dosu suddenly shouted. You would have left me for dead just like Kabuto did. Orochimaru's face twisted into a cruel snare. I saved your life. It was mine to do with as I pleased. His mouth opened and a dozen kunai fired from it, right at the group. Zabuza stepped in between them and the kunai and swung his sword. We'll get going, Hokage-sama. Zabuza said as he formed a seal. A thick mist blew into the area. Sarutobi nodded. Good. Leave this to us. He turned back to his student. Smooth move, shorty. Just provoke him some more. Temari whispered at Dosu as they quickly moved through the mist. Going through the village had been slow for the group as they had to sneak around to avoid fighting all of the Zakus. When they had all begun moving to the first gate, they immediately went to the fourth in hopes of finding no more enemies. Instead, they stumbled upon the Hokage's battle of all the ones to stumble into. I'm not the one that slipped and fell down the rubble when I saw him. I wouldn't have had to say anything if not for you. Dosu whispered back. This technique only works if you idiots are quiet. Zabuza was beginning to wonder why he had wanted a genin team at all right about now. And just where do you think you're going? Orochimaru asked from right in front of them. Zabuza sighed. You see, he was already swinging his sword forward. Orochimaru's sword met his and a loud clang alerted the others to the presence of them all. Go! Zabuza shouted as he pushed back Orochimaru's blade. You go too. Sarutobi appeared with Enma who was back in staff mode. Shut down a Bumizaku. Right. All four of them shouted as they finally ran past the gates of the village. I won't let you. Orochimaru shouted as his body began lurching. His feet transformed and heads began sprouting from his shoulders. Meanwhile, his arms seemed to melt into his torso as his body began to grow bigger and bigger. His transformation finished just as the mist cleared. Yamata no Jutsu. The giant eight-headed snake roared as it stared down at Sarutobi. You foolish student. Sarutobi stared up at the giant snake with pure pity in his eyes. Sarutobi. What are you going to do against that thing? It's huge. Bigger than Manda. Enma shouted as the eye appeared again. I have no choice, Sarutobi said as he placed Enma down. Shiki Fujin. He began to form seals. No, you can't. That jutsu will kill you. Asuma yelled as he landed next to him. That's right. Kurenai also appeared. You're the Hokage. Before they could argue anymore, the snakeheads began to strike. There is no choice. Sarutobi shouted as he jumped and ducked around the giant heads that smashed into the ground. What other way is there to defeat an immortal? I have a better suggestion. The snakeheads quit attacking and everyone turned their heads in surprise at the sound of the new voice. There wasn't just one man standing there though. A whole army of shinobi stood behind the man with white and blue robes that had spoken. His short, brown hair blew gently in the wind. Sarutobi opened and closed his mouth. He then opened it back up. Kazuka Jidono, the Kazekage, the giant 8-headed snake that had once been Orochimaru, hissed. What are you doing here in this village? Could you have decided to lend me your aid? The Kazekage scoffed. Don't get the wrong idea, Orochimaru. I am not here to honor our deal. He jumped down from the rubble he was standing on and landed next to Sarutobi. I am repaying a debt to this village. The Hokage's eyes widened. You can't be serious. The giant snake roared. All of the heads suddenly launched forward, prepared to strike down the two Kage where they stood. I am very serious. The Kazekage raised his arms and bright gold dust rose from groups of containers that his men had brought with them. It smashed into Orochimaru and sent his gigantic body flying across the block where it smashed down on top of several buildings. Asuma let out a whistle. Incredible Ive only heard stories of the Kazekage's magnetism Kekei Genkai that allows him to control gold. He could have any woman he wanted with that ability. Kurenai scoffed from right next to him. Everyone. The Kazekage turned towards his subordinates. Leave the gold dust with me. You all go back up the Shinobi of Konoha at the giant tree. Wait. Hiruzen shouted before they could move. What do you mean you owe us a debt? Just what is going on here? I mean exactly what I said. We are here to ally ourselves with you in this battle. The Kazekage folded his arms and turned back to the old man. Is there something wrong with that? A debt you can't mean because of your son's death? The old man whispered darkly as he took a step closer. What if I do? Hiruzen opened his mouth but he felt Asuma's hand on his shoulder. The bearded man smiled at the Kazekage. We appreciate your help. Please carry on with your orders. The Kazekage nodded thankfully and turned around. You heard me. Everyone get going. Sir. Many of the Sunagakure shinobi immediately began migrating toward the tree. Hiruzen grimaced. Asuma, Kurenai, go with them and make sure our men know they are on our side. Right. Kurenai and Asuma both hurried after them. Now only the two Kage remained. I expected this man to try to attack anyways. My hunch was right. The Kazekage also turned back towards Orochimaru. That is why you left your daughter here, isn't it? To keep tabs on the village. Hiruzen mused quietly. He refused to look the Kazekage in the face. Are you upset because you discovered our plot to attack the village? The Kazekage asked curiously. You should still be attacking us. Hiruzen yelled as he spun on him. One of my subordinates killed your son. Yet instead of being angry, you are grateful. I see. The Kazekage nodded as he turned his gaze away from the old man. As the father of boys yourself, I see how you can find it hard to understand, but you are wrong. I am not helping you because you killed my son. I am helping you because you saved my life. What? Hiruzen asked in surprise. The Kazekage stared at Orochimaru's charging form. You planned to assassinate me before I came to this village, isn't that right, you snake? He shouted. We interrogated a subordinate of yours and he spilled everything. All 8 of the snakeheads laughed loudly. That's right. I was going to kill you so I could get close enough to Sensei to fight him one-on-one. The Kazekage closed his eyes. That's all I needed to hear. Hokage Dono. We will talk about the death of my son after this conflict is resolved. His eyes opened and a surge of killing intent flooded the area. Right now though, I plan to kill the man I find most responsible. The gold sand rose behind him in a massive wave. You think you can defeat me? I had confidence that I could defeat you while I was mortal, you have no chance while I am immortal. Orochimaru roared as he continued to charge at the two Kage. You planned to have extra subordinates and you planned to do it while I was off guard. Besides, I have the one hailed as the professor with me. There isn't a chance we are going to lose. The Kazekage took a couple of steps forward, the golden dust raised menacingly behind him. You should know that just your dust alone won't be enough. I'm immortal. All of the heads shouted as they lunged forward at the two Kage. So you keep saying. The Kazekage mumbled darkly. 8 giant streams of gold dust raced past the two Kage and smashed into Orochimaru's heads. The snake heads and streams of sand began twisting and coiling as they continually smashed into one another in an attempt to get the upper hand. Soon the dust began to completely envelop the giant 8-headed snake. In a matter of moments, it was coated completely in gold. April Rightfessor, time to show me what you are capable of. Sarutobi smiled as he cracked his neck. Been a long time since I've been referred to as that. I guess as far as being a Kage goes, I'm your senpai, so I'll be sure not to let you down. You two are taking me too lightly. Orochimaru yelled in anger. Don't be so cocky. You're the cocky one. Sarutobi shouted as he finished forming a set of seals. Katan, Gokakyu no Jutsu. He exhaled a fireball so big it easily enveloped the whole snake. The heat radiated so violently that both Kage squinted slightly and stepped back. Orochimaru's screams of pain erupted from inside of giant blaze. Finally, the flames began to die down and the galgolds that had once coated the snake was now molten gold. Damn you! Damn you! Orochimaru hollered as he continued to thrash about, splashing the gold everywhere. Time to cool him down. As the Kazekage IH happened to know a couple winds of techniques. The young Kage ran through several seals. Futon, Kamikaze no Jutsu. He exhaled a powerful gust of wind that immediately cooled down the gold enough so that Orochimaru's thrashing became stiff. In just a matter of moments he was no longer able to move at all. Did that get him? Enma asked, his eye sticking out of the staff. Not likely. If my foolish student had one trait I could brag about, it would be his tenacity. Sarutobi said as he lifted Enma and began to cautiously approach the statue-like snake. The Kazekage took a couple of steps forward as well. A moment later and they felt the ground beneath their feet shift. Sarutobi whirled around just in time to see Orochimaru's normal body break free from the ground behind the Kazekage, his sword in his hand. Kazekage dono. Sarutobi shouted just as Orochimaru swung his sword down. How desperate. A stream of gold dust shot from the pouch on the Kazekage's hip and easily halted the movement of the sword hat. Orochimaru was so surprised he wasn't able to counter Enma as he extended into his face, knocking him backward and sending him rolling. Damn you, the Sannin mumbled as he got to his feet. You brought this on yourself. The Kazekage took a couple of sets of forwarding and a small stream of dust that had defended him morphed itself into a golden katana. Wait! Orochimaru shouted as he held his hand in front of himself. Are you sure you are making the right choice? What about your village? This is your chance, we can still topple Konoha together. Speak again and I'll chop your tongue out. The Kazekage said darkly. These people killed your son. A moment later and Orochimaru let out a scream of pain as the Kazekage kept his word and sliced his tongue out. Orochimaru turned around to run but Sarutobi was there. His tongue formed back as he gazed with pure contempt at the old man. You think you've won, don't you, Sarutobi-sensei? Wiles, got news for you. This battle is far from won. This village will still fall. That's enough, Orochimaru. Sarutobi sighed. You've done enough. You are going to have a long eternity to think how you've fallen so low. Orochimaru began cackling madly. Both Kage shared a concerned glance before they looked back at the laughing man. Do you know the way Kabuto made this body move? Orochimaru waited only a second before he began to answer his own. He imprinted a seal inside of my body with a special set of commands. Do you know what the command is when I find myself in this type of situation? Sarutobi already didn't like where this was going. You can't mean an explosion using my very soul as its ignition. It will likely take half of the village with it. That bastard Kabuto would take away my finally attained immortality with a command like this. A bright purple light began shining through Sanon's pale skin. Orochimaru! Sarutobi shouted as he took a step forward. There is no time for that. The Kazekage shouted as he appeared next to Sarutobi, grabbed onto him, and immediately warped them both back a large distance. What are you doing? We can't let that go off. Sarutobi yelled. The wind was suddenly knocked out of him as the Kazekage buried his fist in his stomach. The Sandaime dropped to his knees and sent spit flying to the ground. I won't let this village be destroyed. The Kazekage said with resolve as he turned back to Orochimaru, who was swirling with purple energy now. He raised his arms and the golden dust began swirling towards Orochimaru. Say goodbye to your precious village, Sarutobi Sensei. Orochimaru was still laughing loudly as the light all closed on the center of his chest and then began expanding rapidly. The golden dust compacted into a ball and began to close in, blocking out the purple light. The package began to sweat as the ball of dust was being pushed at by the explosion. I won't let you. He dropped to his knees and clenched his hands. The dust suddenly compacted completely as it sealed off the explosion. Silence. Complete silence settled over the small area. Did you stop it? Sarutobi finally asked. The Kazekage was panting heavily as he stumbled up to his feet. Of course. Nothing could penetrate through my shield of gold. Whether that be from the inside or outside. It is the ultimate absolute defense. Incredible. Sarutobi gazed at glittering dust as it all began to flow towards them. Do you think he is gone? Hiruzen nodded his head. He said it himself, he blew up his very soul for that explosion. He's not coming back. The Kazekage nodded as he folded his arms. Then it would appear our job over here is finished. We must back our men up at the tree. Sarutobi nodded. I owe you my thanks for coming to save my village. I also would like to apologize. I was rude to you earlier. Sarutobi bowed low to the young Kage in front of him. Save that kind of stuff for after we survive this battle. The Kazekage said as he began to move forward slowly. There will be plenty of time for diplomacy then. Hiruzen readjusted his helmet. Yes. For now, we have to continue to defend this village. They both said the next words together. We'll show them not to mess with the Kage. The rookies took cover behind a large pile of rubble just in front of the base of the massive tree. That thing is huge, Sakura whispered in awe at it. I think it's even taller than the Hokage monument. We're not here to sightsee. Kiba chided his teammate quietly as he stared intently at all the battles erupting around the tree. He couldn't even believe it himself. Explosions, elemental jutsu, and thrown projectiles were constantly within sight. Hundreds upon hundreds of shinobi were fighting from underneath the roots of the tree to the way high on the trunk and even in the branches that were at least 100 stories in the air. We might be in over our heads, Shikamaru noted with a dry mouth as he too watched all the battles. He however was more intent on all the Zakus that were buzzing around the roots, attempting to set fire to the base of the tree. While it seemed like they had done a good job in killing a couple of dozen of them, there were easily 1,000 more. That kid may not be powerful, but he makes up for it with quantity. Who knows how many people he's killed simply by self-destructing. As he said that, he watched as a couple of Jonin were caught in the blast of a Zaku that had just exploded. Why aren't these green orbs protecting shinobi? Ino asked as she lightly snatched at an orb. It somehow seemed to sense it and evaded her hand. It is only working on civilians. Shino adjusted his glasses. The jutsu likely doesn't have the strength to protect so many people. We should be thankful it is doing as much as it is. Wait for a second, a huge group of people is approaching. Kiba rose his nose into the air and sniffed loudly. That smell. It couldn't be. What is it? Sakura asked. They're definitely from Sunagakure. Just as Kiba finished speaking, dozens of men and women garbed in light brown chunin vests arrived on the scene and launched attacks at Zaku's and Otogakure shinobi alike. They're helping us? Choji asked in surprise. Why? I got a feeling I know, Sakura said as she smiled happily at the reinforcements. She watched as all the Konoha shinobi turned slightly in surprise at the arrival of their new comrades, but they quickly renewed their attack with newfound vigor. Ino suddenly shrieked loudly, causing everyone to jump and look at her. To their surprise, she wasn't under attack. Instead, she was pointed up at the giant tree. That's the night aim. She shouted. Impossible. Shikamaru turned his gaze to where she was pointing anyways. His eyes nearly bugged from his sockets when he saw Ino was right. Something is amiss. Is that not Hatake Kakashi engaged in combat with him? Shino suddenly voiced up. You're right. Choji watched as the two men punched and kicked at one another. Just what is going on? Before anyone could ask any more, they watched the tournament referee, Hayate, run forward and slice Nidame's head off with his blade. To everyone's continued surprise, it grew back on. We're definitely in over our heads. We need to retreat. Shikamaru turned back around but stopped dead in his tracks. Everyone move. He shouted a second later. All the genin spun around and saw a hailstorm of kunai coming at them. Oh crap! They all immediately jumped skywards and landed on top of the pile of rubble they had been hiding behind. The kunai struck the pieces of concrete and bounced lightly off, but the flickering of tags on the back caught Shino's eyes. Not good, he mumbled as the explosions went off. None of them were caught in the blasts, but the rubble they were standing on collapsed and they all tumbled unceremoniously towards the ground. Kiba barely managed to land on his feet and he immediately noticed Akamaru laying on the ground, morphed back into a dog. Are you all right? He shouted as he ran up to him. Shino! Sakura screamed worriedly. The bug user was writhing in pain, holding on to the spot where his arm had been severed. Someone help him. He's in great pain. Sakura looked around frantically. What she saw first only made her more frantic. Choji was leaning an unconscious Ino and Shikamaru up against smaller mounds of rubble. Kiba scooped Akamaru up, but before he could run at them he saw four figures land in the spot close to where they had just been standing. He didn't like what he saw. Four Otogakure Jonin stood in front of him and they were likely the ones who had thrown the kunai. Amen. One of them sighed loudly. It's just a group of kids. I was hoping to slaughter someone stronger than that. He flipped a kunai in the air as he talked and caught it. Who cares who it is? Let's slaughter them and move on. The other said as he began to form seals. Stop right there. Kiba shouted as he slipped Akamaru into the hood of his jacket and then pulled out two kunai. The men chuckled at him. You think you can take us, kid? Suddenly, a giant purple beam came flying from the side that eradicated 3 of the Otogakure shinobi. Kiba and the remaining Otogakure shinobi widened their eyes in surprise. Yes! I killed them! Screamed a dark-skinned man with orange hair. Yugo! We're your allies, damn it! The remaining man shouted. Kill! The monstrous youth called Yugo screamed as his one arm formed into a giant axe. He swung it forward and hacked the shinobi unfortunate enough to be in front of him apart. I killed him too. I did it. Yugo screamed happily. What a psycho. Kiba couldn't believe what he had just witnessed in front of his very eyes. He recognized the man as one who bared one of Orochimaru's curse marks. He had seen at least another 50 of them running around and fighting at the base of the tree just moments ago. It was their bad luck that an especially unstable one seemed to have found them. Are you next? Yugo tilted his head to a right angle as he grinned greedily at Kiba now. Are you the next one I get to kill? He immediately began to sprint towards the young genin, his axe-shaped arm held high above his head. This is not looking good. Kiba slid one foot backward and raised both kunai in front of himself. Then something running out from the side caught his eye. No, you don't. Choji held up a massive arm that looked like it had been inflated. He swung it forward and it smashed into Yugo's face with such force that any ordinary person would have been blasted off their feet. Yugo, however, didn't even seem fazed. Instead, he slowly turned his grinning face towards Choji now. The heavy-set genin took a step back in fear. Is it you who wants to be killed next? Yugo roared as he swung his axe arm forward. His movements stopped in their tracks. His axe arm retracted and he raised his two normal hands to his head and started screaming. Kiba spun his gaze to Sakura, who was holding her hands in a seal. I put him in a genjutsu that makes him think he's on fire. She explained as she got to her feet. We need to use this chance to get the others out of here. Kiba nodded and ran over to grab Ino, but Yugo's screams suddenly intensified, stopping them all as they watched him freak out. It hurts. It hurts. Yugo screamed as his body seemed to be reconstructing itself. He seemingly doubled in size as giant pads of armor made of his skin wrapped around him. His enhanced size seemed to increase his weight too, as his feet sunk slightly into the ground, cracking the earth and splitting the concrete he stood on. What the heck is going on? Sakura felt her knees go weak from the amount of killing intent being leaked from the boy's body. His chakra flow changed completely. That means he broke the genjutsu, huh? Kiba had a bad feeling about this. Yeah, it does. Sakura nodded dumbly. Was it you? Was it you that caused me pain? Yugo screamed as he began charging at Kiba like a stampeding gorilla. I'll kill you for it. I'll rip you apart. Damn it. Kiba whipped both kunai at him. To his utter horror, they bounced off of Yugo's enhanced armor as if it had only been a small rock. This is not looking good. Before he could react further, a ball at the end of a long chain swung around and immediately bound Yugo's huge body. The giant man collapsed to the ground in a loud thud that sent pieces of concrete flying everywhere. Next, a series of fireballs came flying around and began pelting the massive body of the big man, exploding and covering him in smoke at the same time. Sakura turned to the people who had saved them. Her eyes widened in surprise when she realized who it was. Sasuke-kun. Tenten-san. The two of them landed down next to Kiba, who quickly saw they looked a little worse for wear themselves. You two sure you should be out here after just fighting in the tournament? Tenten scoffed. Just because we lost doesn't mean you should underestimate us. Right, Sasuke? The Uchiha nodded. We'll show that we deserve to get as far as we got while you get the others to a safe place. We can't let you guys fight this monster by yourselves. Sakura yelled. We'll be fine, you need to get your teammates to safety. Worry about us later. Sasuke turned and looked at her as he reassured her. This battle is bound to have attracted more enemies. The only reason they haven't shown up is that everyone is afraid of this guy. If you bring him down before getting everyone to safety, you are only putting their lives in greater danger. Kiba scoffed. Why is it always us that is being saved? He grumbled as he picked Ino up. Meanwhile, Sakura hefted Shino to his feet and Choji had Shikamaru already. If you got it then hurry up, Tenten said as the smoke around Yugo finally cleared. That guy shrunk down to normal and broke free from my chains. Sorry for being a burden, Shino mumbled quietly as he cringed. The spot where he had lost his arm was burning with pain. Don't worry about it, Sakura said soothingly. You're still not up to top form is all. Once you are, you can return the favor. She immediately began running towards the roots as there were plenty of spaces to hide in there. Kiba and Choji were right behind her. Do you guys hear something giant moving? Sakura asked before they got more than even a single block. Sakura slowed up a stop and the others did too. They all then jumped on top of another pile of rubble to get a better vantage point. What they saw completely threw them all off guard. A wave of golden dust was flowing towards the tree at incredible speeds. That wasn't what got them the most though. On top of the gold wave rode not just their Hokage but the apparent Kazekage as well. This invasion just keeps getting more and more bizarre. Choji wished he had something to munch on. The others could only nod in agreement to his statement. Sasuke and Tenten had no time to be paying attention to such things, however. Yugo was charging right at them, and this time his whole body was covered with giant spikes. You think we're going to be okay? This guy did kill a group of Jonin just now. Tenten placed her hand on a scroll on her hip. A scythe popped out of it and she spun it around expertly. Sasuke smirked as he formed a set of seals. Those guys were a group of nobodies. We got this. When he finished speaking he inhaled deeply. Katan, Gokakyu no Jutsu. He shot a giant fireball straight in front of himself. I'll just kill that too. Yugo laughed manically as he charged straight into the fireball, obliterating it. To his surprise though, in the brief second the fire had blocked his vision, Sasuke and Tenten had both vanished. Looking for me? Yugo spun around to see Sasuke standing on top of a still-standing lamppost. He pulled at a group of barely visible wires and Yugo felt his limbs become bounded once again. Now take this. Tenten screamed as she appeared over his head, swinging down the scythe in her hand. Yugo, instead of looking afraid, smiled for a brief moment. He then opened his mouth wide and as the scythe reached his face he bit down, shattering the metal with his teeth. Damn, never seen that before. Tenten landed in a crouch in front of the towering youth. She immediately held a small sword in her hand. Katan, Ryuka no Jutsu. Sasuke set the strings that bound Yugo on fire and the fire quickly raced down towards the still bounded monster. No more fire. Yugo screamed as all the spikes on his body sunk back in. They immediately sprouted back out in different spots, snapping Sasuke's wires apart and breaking Tenten's blade that she had just swung forward. Now die. Yugo's whole arm had transformed into a giant spike and he swung it down at Tenten. That's getting old, Tenten mumbled as she flipped backward and over the spike that smashed pointlessly into the ground. She threw a group of shuriken before her feet even touched the ground. Unsurprisingly, the shuriken bounced off uselessly. Killing never gets old. Yugo pulled his arm out of the ground but the sound of chirping birds stopped him from charging forward. Chidori. Sasuke roared as he fell towards his opponent, his lightning-enhanced hand outstretched towards him. Yugo grinned as he turned at Sasuke and swung his spiked arm forward. Their piercing attacks connected and Sasuke's shattered through Yugo's completely. Sasuke continued into Yugo's arm until he flew past the shoulder, successfully destroying his arm entirely. Gah! Yugo reached around and grabbed onto his shoulder, holding onto it with all his might. The rest of his spikes disappeared as he fell to his knees. It hurts. He whimpered. Not as bad as this will. Tenten spun around and hurled a massive, spiked ball. The ball smashed Yugo right in the chest, bowling the big boy over. The ball bounced backward slightly and Sasuke's eye caught a glimpse of the exploding tags covering it. The explosions went off a moment later. Sasuke appeared next to Tenten unharmed but glaring. Wait for me to get clear before you do something like that. I could have died. You wouldn't have died. Tenten patted him on the shoulder with a huge grin plastered on her face. We've gotten to know each other too well to make a rookie mistake like that. You're nuts. Sasuke shook his head indignantly as he turned back to the clearing smoke. Yugo lay there with his whole chest blown open, revealing his ribs and some of his organs. A truly disgusting sight, thought the surviving Uchiha. Yugo's remaining arm was stretched far to the side, and it was just then that he noticed a strange needle was sticking out of it. He followed the needle to see that it connected to the Otogekure Jonin that Yugo had cut down earlier. Lumps of something were coming back through the needle towards Yugo, and the man seemed to be shrinking. Oh, crap! Sasuke realized too late what was going on as he charged forward. What is it? Tenten, who hadn't been paying attention, now saw what Sasuke had just seen. Damn! She too ran after him. Yugo's chest repaired itself and he stumbled up to his feet, retracting the needle. You can't kill me, it is I who will kill you. He screamed at the charging Sasuke. It was then that his other arm completely grew back all at once. What? Sasuke stopped hard as Yugo's arm grew until it was triple in size. He then swung it forward in a large arc. Sasuke! Tenten screamed as she watched Yugo swat her teammate to the side like an insect. I killed him! Yugo screamed into the air as he raised his arms triumphantly. Think again. Sasuke's hands shot from the ground underneath Yugo's feet before the bigger boy could react. He was sucked into the ground and Sasuke was flying overhead. Tenten, now. Nice work. Tenten glanced ever so briefly at what once would have been Sasuke and saw a log was there instead. She then pulled a windmill shuriken from her scroll and threw it at Yugo's head, which still stuck out of the ground. You should have been killed. Yugo showed no interest in the shuriken flying at his head. Instead, he glared at Sasuke, who again landed on top of the lamppost. The ground ruptured as two wings split off of his back and he took flight into the air, completely dodging the shuriken that continued straight on. This guy can fly too? Sasuke was starting to get annoyed. First, he could morph his body at will, but now he could regenerate damage and fly. That was too much. It didn't help that he kept saying the word kill, which was possibly more annoying than everything else together. The sight of Tenten's shuriken changing course caught his eyes now. It flew straight up until it was well over their heads and then began to angle its way back down. It was on a collision course with Yugo, who had again transformed his right arm into a giant axe. Sasuke was even more impressed when he saw the shuriken break off into two, each one slicing off one of Yugo's wings. Not bad, Tenten. He nodded down towards his teammate. Are you the one interrupting my kill? Yugo screamed as he landed on the ground on his feet. He didn't seem at all hurt by the fact that his wings had been cut off, but he was peeved. Enough with the freaking word already. Tenten held the side of her head in irritation. She then pointed dramatically at Yugo. You're turning into one of those main characters that overuse his catchphrase. Don't you know that is the best way to get people to hate you? Yugo stared at her with an expression that could have been an odd mix of anger, confusion, and constipation. Sasuke just shook his head. He felt stupid for having been impressed with her at all. I'm not sure what you mean. Yugo's body began morphing again and he again looked like he had a group of smokestacks sticking out of him. So I'll just kill you instead. Instead of a beam, a miniature barrage of purple chakra missiles shot from the smokestacks and flew straight at Tenten. That right there is what I'm talking about. Tenten continued to point at him, braving the missiles to scold her opponent. Come on. Sasuke appeared behind her with a tired face. You can argue about stupid things with your friends later. He wrapped his arm around her waist and immediately warped them both to a safer location. That guy is not my friend. Tenten screamed before she felt Sasuke cover her mouth with his hand. Where did you go? Come back. Tenten realized that Sasuke had jumped the two of them behind a small stack of rubble. Her yelling had almost given them away. We need to come up with a better strategy to beat this guy, Sasuke whispered as he peeked over the rubble. No matter what we do, he just regenerates or changes forms to match whatever we use. We got him that one time. We just weren't thorough enough. Tenten rolled over onto her stomach and also peeked over the rubble. Yugo walked up to a random building and fired his purple chakra missiles into it, destroying the establishment. Were you in there? Did that kill you? Tenten shivered in irritation at the use of that word again. Maybe you're right. He can regenerate his skin, but what about his heart? If we can open him up like before and attack it, I wonder if it would put him down for good? Sasuke mused quietly as he rubbed his chin. If I open him back up, do you think you could use the Chidori to do the job? Tenten wasn't sure if it was much, but any plan was better than none and they needed one fast. The things Yugo was blowing up were getting closer and closer to their hiding place. Sasuke grimaced at the suggestion. It depends. I've already used it twice today, which is still my limit. However, if those medics healed me enough after my battle with Naruto, I may be able to squeeze one out. What would you give for odds? Tenten asked hopefully. The pile of rubble next to them exploded in a blast of purple smoke. 50/50, Sasuke said after a moment of thought. Yugo turned his huge body to the pile of rubble they were behind. That's going to have to work. We're out of time. Our lives are riding on this gamble. Yugo fired off another set of missiles at them. You hide until I open him up. Then charge in, no hesitation. Tenten yelled as she jumped straight into the air. As she flipped around, she watched Sasuke vanish to another location just before the place they had been hiding got blasted apart. I found you. Yugo yelled as he turned towards the sky where Tenten was. He fired off yet another barrage of missiles. You sure did. Tenten hurled a group of kunai that met with the missiles, causing them to explode in midair. Watching that gave the weapon expert an idea. She smiled mischievously as she fell to the ground. She pulled what could be mistaken as a cannonball attached to a short chain just before she hit the ground. She then heaved it up with great effort. I forgot how heavy this damn thing was. No wonder I hate using it. So you've decided that you are the one is going to be killed? Yugo began firing the missiles off non-stop. He almost looked like a machine gun with the way he kept firing off more and more. Tenten quickly started running in a zigzag pattern towards the giant killing machine, a vein in her head throbbing. I thought I told you to quit it with that. She roared as she dodged explosions on all sides as she got closer and closer. Yugo was laughing maniacally. What are you going to do? You can't possibly stop me from saying the truth. Just watch me. Tenten halted in her tracks and spun in a circle, swinging the metal ball from the end of its chain. With a loud yell of exertion, she completed her spin and whipped the ball with all her might at Yugo. The boy only laughed as it flew at him, his cannons still firing constantly. As if that could even scratch me. Oh, it will, Tenten smirked as explosions erupted all around her. Huh. Yugo was completely taken aback as the ball didn't exactly hit him but slid snugly inside one of the smokestacks he was firing from. Oh. He never got to finish that as the pressure of a missile trying to be released from that smokestack caused it to explode, literally blowing up in Yugo's face. He tumbled backward, his flesh was blown apart, opening the way to his organs once again. Sasuke. Now's your chance. Tenten yelled just as the last missile Yugo had managed to fire landed right in front of her feet. She was blasted backward and sent rolling onto the ground. Ugh, she moaned as she opened one eye just halfway. To her relief, Sasuke was already charging at Yugo, who had fallen to his knees. To her fear, however, he did not have a Chidori in hand. Instead, he ran at the man with a kunai. Yugo stared at him with a look of pure rage. That little toy won't be enough to stop me. It's going to have to be. Sasuke shouted as he swung it forward, right at Yugo's exposed heart. He wasn't able to react in time, however, when Yugo's arm shot forward and caught it. What? Sasuke couldn't believe he had the strength left to do something like that with a hole that big in him. Now give me your body so I can heal my own. Yugo raised his other hand and slammed it down on top of Sasuke's head. The Uchiha was smashed painfully into the ground at Yugo's knees. He turned his gaze upward slightly to see the needle Yugo had used earlier begin to come out of his open palm. "Ten," Sasuke mumbled in a barely audible voice. "I'm sorry. I couldn't use another Chidori after all. I didn't have the strength." The needle was coming closer and closer to his flesh. "This fight is over when I say it's over, Sasuke." Uchiha's eyes snapped completely open. Those had been Naruto's last words when he had won that fight. Where had he found that strength from? The resolve to push himself just another move further? Sasuke wanted to laugh. In his final moments, he thought about Naruto. "Sasuke, don't give up. Believe in yourself." Ten screamed as she stumbled forward but collapsed again. "Believe in me?" Sasuke asked. The needle was inches away. Was that what it had been all along? Just the ability to believe and the strength to not give up? Sasuke had no idea, but he felt something welling up in the bottom of his stomach. Something powerful. His hand shot up and grabbed onto the needle just before it pierced him. "What are you doing?" Yugo sounded almost mocking as he stared down at his beaten opponent. "I'm stopping you." Sasuke's hand began shaking violently as he pushed Yugo's needle up. Slowly but surely he managed to do so. Soon he put his other hand on the ground as he helped himself to his knees and pushed Yugo back farther. "You can't possibly do this." Yugo couldn't believe he was being overpowered by this little whelp. "This fight is already over." Sasuke finally rose to his feet and threw Yugo's arm to the side. He then formed 3 seals and held his hand up. A blue blade of electricity formed and he slowly brought it back into striking position. "This fight is over when I say it's over," he shouted as he took the last step forward and swung his attack around. "Chidori. No. You can't kill me." Yugo raised both arms over his heart, but Sasuke pierced through them easily. His attack carried on flawlessly and struck Yugo right in the heart. The light slowly dimmed from the giant boy's eyes as Sasuke pulled his hand backward. It was stained heavily with blood. With a loud thud, Yugo collapsed to the floor at Sasuke's feet. "Sasuke." Ten finally reached the Uchiha but tumbled. She fell into Sasuke and had to lean against him for support. "You asshole." She screamed as she recovered and then slapped him in the face. "What the hell was that for?" Sasuke asked as he took a step back and raised his hand to his face. "For scaring me. I thought he was about to kill you. You should have just stuck with the plan from the beginning." Ten stared at Sasuke with blazing eyes. Sasuke scoffed and averted his eyes. "It was a stupid plan. I thought my way would have worked better." "Bull, I saw you whisper your apology." Ten placed her hands on her hips as she continued to glare at him. "If you heard that, then you know why I didn't keep to the plan." Sasuke turned back to her as he yelled. Ten opened her mouth to respond, but the sound of something flying overhead caused her to stop and look up. Sasuke followed her gaze. Flying straight down at them were 3 more Zakus. "Damn," Sasuke mumbled as he and Ten immediately began to limp away, using each other as support. "Where do you think you're going, Uchiha? I owe you one for what happened in the forest." All 3 Zakus yelled at the same time. One of them opened his mouth. The metal wire shot out from it and wrapped around the 2 of them. "Take this," he shouted as it spun them around in a wide arc before slamming them into a wall. "Now have fun in hell." All 3 Zaku opened their chests up, prepared to fire more kunai. Not so fast. A gray spinning drill smashed into one of the Zaku, freeing Sasuke and Ten in the process. The other 2 turned around and prepared to shoot the kunai, but one got hit with a kunai that exploded a moment later and Choji appeared and smashed the other with his giant fist. "You guys okay?" Sakura asked as she landed next to them and pulled them free from the metal cord. "Thanks to you guys." Ten nodded thankfully at Sakura, who was pulling her to her feet. "We said we would be back." Kiba landed on all fours on the ground. Choji meanwhile inspected Yugo's dead body. I'm really surprised you guys got him. He was such a monster. One look from him and I was frozen. Trust us, it wasn't easy, Sasuke mumbled as he finally got to his own feet. So what's the plan from here? We thought you guys had a plan. Kabuto grinned maliciously as Lee charged at him in his usual taijutsu stance with one arm forward and the other held behind his back. What a hasty guy, you didn't even let me announce the winner. Where is the fun in that? There is no more time for your fun. Lee shouted as he jumped high into the air. He seemed to hang suspended for just a moment before his body burst into action and he spun around, delivering his signature spinning kick. Konoha senpai. Kabuto sighed in what sounded like pity as he raised his hand into the air. Without any effort whatsoever he caught Lee right by his orange leg warmer. Allow me to show you the difference between a jonin and a genin. He was already swinging Lee down as he spoke. Lee was smashed with great force into the water in front of Kabuto's feet. The white-haired man crouched down and stared at Lee's face, which was just barely above the water. You see? It's not a matter of fate, hard work, or believing in yourself this time. It's simply the difference in strength between you and me. Kabuto had yet to let go of Lee's leg and he suddenly jerked up on it, pulling Lee into the air. Now be a good boy and let me finish up with my business. He threw Lee halfway across the stadium with the barest of movement from his arm. Lee slammed into the water with a loud smash and Kabuto turned back towards Naruto with a satisfied smirk on his face. Now then, where were we? He asked as he walked up to Naruto, scalpel in hand. We were at the part where we kicked your ass and saved the village from otherwise certain doom. Naruto flashed Kabuto a foxy smile as he laced his voice with heavy sarcasm. Ah, yes. Kabuto hit his open palm with the bottom of the kunai. I remember that now. A moment later and the sound of something piercing flesh reached Naruto's ears. He looked down in surprise to see that Kabuto had stabbed him right on the edge of his seal, just barely missing it. When Kabuto next spoke, his voice was dark and terrifying. You think the situation you're in is something you can laugh off? He asked as Naruto attempted to keep his face straight through the pain. Well? He twisted the scalpel and Naruto let out a small moan. I didn't think so. The moan seemed to satisfy Kabuto as he pulled the scalpel out of Naruto's stomach. You are about to have the kyubi extracted from your body. A process that will also rip the very life out of you. You should think your last minutes out a little more carefully, don't you think? Could it bet hat you, Kabuto, are afraid of your death? Naruto gave Kabuto an incredibly pained smile until the back of Kabuto's hand smashed into his cheek. Naruto spit blood and some began to dribble down the side of his chin as well. I do not fear death. Kabuto seethed darkly. I view it as the next step in my journey towards learning the mystery behind this world. Maybe instead of worrying about why it's here you should be worrying about what you can do to make life better here? Naruto flinched slightly as he expected another blow to follow his statement but none came. Instead, Kabuto stared at him evenly. I am making this world better for myself. Once this village is down, I shall move on to the next one. Then the next. I will conquer them all, gaining in strength and knowledge as I revive each village's heroes and gather the bijou. Kabuto rubbed Naruto's cheek gently as he said these things in an even gentler tone. I thought this was for science. Naruto did not like the way this guy was touching him one bit and the disgust showed on his face. Oh, it is, Kabuto assured. When I rule the whole world I'll be able to study and experiment as I please. Nothing will be taboo anymore and I will have infinite resources. It all starts here, with you, Naruto-kun. Kabuto ripped Naruto's green jacket open by the zipper, revealing his seal for him to see. Not if I have anything to say about it. Kabuto's anger resurfaced with full force as he spun around to see Lee standing again and staring at him. You just don't know how to quit. Kabuto sighed as he massaged his forehead. I guess this is also my fault for not just killing you in the first place. He raised the scalpel. Come and die then. Hinata watched intently as Lee did just that and charged forward. She nodded lightly to herself. The time was now. She had been lying motionless so she could gather her chakra and be of help, but the time for that was over. She closed her eyes and focused. She could see over which of her chakra points the ropes of water wrapped around. Exerting chakra from those points, she snapped the ropes apart like they were paper. She was immediately up and running. "Lee Senpai!" she shouted. "What?" Kabuto turned an annoyed eye towards her now too. "So you both want to die now, is it? I had expected more from you, little Hinata." "Lee Senpai!" Hinata repeated as she ran not towards Kabuto but straight on a collision course towards Lee. "Open the first gate. Let's use that move." "Right." Lee shouted as he unwrapped his bandages. Kabuto didn't like the sound of that. He started to move forward, but the two of them were already together. "First gate, open." Lee shouted as his arm bandages began to wrap around Hinata's body. He snapped them tight and jumped high into the air, taking her with him. As they reached the height of their arc, he began spinning rapidly. "Hakusho Kaiten, attack mode." They shouted together as Hinata's spinning shield turned into a deadly drill that began flying at Kabuto. The glasses-wearing shinobi realized instantly that there would be no possible way of stopping that for him. So he did the one thing he could do. He spun around and slashed at Naruto. His scalpel just barely grazed him when the drill arrived. It just barely nicked Kabuto, sending him flying to the side from the force of the rotation and tearing into the skin around his ribs. Naruto gave a huge smile as he swung his legs up, letting his teammate successfully smash the bottom of the cross. A moment later and Naruto was sent flying through the air, the cross crumbling apart, allowing Naruto to pull his hands free. The two kunai that had bounded him fell towards the water. He landed right next to Lee and Hinata, who stopped their spin and separated from each other. "Thanks, guys, it was uncomfortable being pinned to that thing." "Naruto-kun!" Hinata shouted as she jumped onto him, giving him a big hug and burying her face in his shoulder. Hey, Naruto sighed happily despite the situation. Hinata was the same as always. Suddenly though, he cringed and buckled down to one knee. "Naruto-kun?" Hinata asked worriedly. Just a moment later and she was shoved violently backward by a burst of red chakra that began to leak out of Naruto's body. It grew even more violent and started to swirl at high speeds, pushing even the water back. A fox head made entirely of chakra rose above his head as the chakra gathered wildly in that spot. "What is going on?" Kabuto chuckled as he got up to his feet. He held his hand over his ribs, healing the skin that had been ripped apart by Lee and Hinata's combination attack. "I told you, that cross allowed me to operate on special chakras. Just before you hit me I made sure to operate a little." Hinata, Lee, and Naruto all turned their heads down to look at his seal. Hinata and Lee couldn't see clearly from the violent wave of red chakra that was pushing them back. To Naruto though it was as clear as day. In the center of his seal was a small swirl. However, his swirl now had a straight clear line going through it, showing skin that should have otherwise been black. "You only swiped it just a little." Naruto turned and yelled at the white-haired man. "That was all that was necessary," Kabuto smirked as he readjusted his glasses. "With a crack that big in the seal the Kyuubi can easily finish the rest. Then what was with dragging it out as you did? You could have done this forever ago." Naruto began to crumple more under the increased strain he was feeling and he began to sweat from the intense heat inside the zone. The fox head above him was beginning to get much bigger and it had sprouted a neck now too. Kabuto laughed louder. "I told you. I like to enjoy myself. This village can't stop me anyways, it doesn't matter how long I delay." You bastard! Naruto attempted to stand up, but it felt like his gravity had increased dramatically within the zone of red chakra. Naruto-kun. Hinata startled Naruto by her proximity. He turned to see her just a couple of feet away from him, inside the mass of swirling red chakra. Hinata! What are you doing? Get out of here! Naruto screamed at her. Hinata shook her head stubbornly. Not without you. She finally dropped to her knees just in front of him. She clasped her hands around his. I won't ever leave you. Hinata. Naruto couldn't think of anything to say. Instead, he settled on a determined stare. I won't let this thing free, Hinata. He's staying right where he belongs, and then we're going to kick this guy's ass together. Hinata nodded enthusiastically to his words. Neither of them paid attention to the fact that part of the fox's body was beginning to grow over their heads. You can do it, Naruto-kun. I believe in you. She squeezed his hands harder as they felt continue to be crushed by the increased pressure. If only I knew something about seals, then I could repair it. She mumbled as she stared down at it. Naruto widened his eyes at Hinata's words. That's it. He shouted as he held his right hand up. To his relief, it was still openly bleeding. The chakra leaking out of him wasn't going to heal. He mixed the blood on his 3 inside fingers and then looked down at the seal. With 3 precise strokes, he covered the missing parts of the seal with his blood. The effect was instantaneous. The fox head made of chakra crumbled away completely and the chakra quit swirling nearly as madly as before. The heat died down and ever so slowly all that chakra began to return to his body. What did you do? Kabuto suddenly bellowed at the top of his lungs. Hinata looked at him incredulously. What did you do? She repeated. Naruto smirked as he stood up. I fixed it, of course. A little of my blood to fill in the missing holes and this baby is as good as new. Naruto stumbled just slightly. Okay, I can feel more of the fox's chakra than normal, but it is almost as good as new. Impossible, Kabuto ground his teeth as he stared at the blonde. A temporary fix like that? How could something so incredibly stupid work so well? Hinata smiled up at her boyfriend as she gave him another big hug. Good thinking, Naruto-kun. Naruto chuckled as he scratched his head. You're the one who gave me the idea. I'm just thankful it worked. Kabuto took in a couple of deep breaths as he attempted to calm himself down. It's no problem. I'll just do it again. He whispered. Now then. Naruto shouted as Lee ran up to them. Where were we? That line caused Kabuto to cringe in anger. He knew what was coming next. Oh yeah, I remember. We were at the part where we kicked your ass and saved the village from otherwise certain doom. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to like and subscribe, and don't forget to share this video with your friends. Guys, make sure to help the author by visiting the link in the description. This is Fox Sage, and I'm signing off. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to like and subscribe, and don't forget to share this video with your friends. If you want early updates, check out Patreon. This is Fox Sage, and I'm signing off.